Before we get into the meat of today's video, I thought I'd let you know that tonight, 9:30 PM GMT, there will be a response to Prime Minister's questions. I'm expecting this to be a Brexit-related PMQ, because as of last night, apparently members of the cabinet are being brought in to number 10 Downing Street one at a time to go over the alleged completed deal, which Jacob Rees-Mogg has said doesn't make us a vassal state but a slave state, and he will vote against it.
Well, if what we've heard is true, this fails to meet the Conservative Party's manifesto, and it fails to meet many of the commitments that the Prime Minister makes. It would keep us in the customs union and de facto in the single market. This is the vassal state. It is a failure of the government's negotiating position. It is a failure to deliver on Brexit, and it is potentially dividing up the United Kingdom. It is very hard to see any reason why the Cabinet should support Northern Ireland being ruled from Dublin.
Also, I have a poll that might still be running at time this video is released, where I am asking you what I should play next on my game channel. Euro Truck is winning, which is triggering a few people. If it wins, so be it. I can't multitask though, so engaging with the chat and driving is going to be challenging. Link to that below. So for the subject of today's video, we're going to be talking about a single man. His name is Nazir Afzal. He is a British solicitor who has been heavily involved in areas of child sexual exploitation and violence against women. What makes this man interesting is he's one of the good Muslims. He is one of those in favour of women's rights. He's against FGM, honour killings, forced marriage, and he is somebody who, on his Twitter especially, is in favour of de-radicalisation in all forms, which makes him a very good and interesting person. One of the most notable things he has been involved in is he was the CPS prosecutor who brought the prosecutions against the Rochdale grooming gang. Now, to couple with a tweet he put out, which is actually pinned to his Twitter from May 2017, we have a picture here of the Rochdale people, and then stand up against abuse, not against communities, because obviously the kind of abuse children experience is not exclusive to one community. It's just a shame that on these images here with all these white men, the others only got really busted. Okay, except for this one, only really got busted after he died. The straw that broke the camel's back was that it was finally made clear this man abused kids for 30 years. Defund the BBC, everyone. Needs to happen. Now, Nazir Afzal, along with dealing with the Rochdale gangs and getting the convictions, back in October, appeared on a Radio 4 programme where he is quoted as saying, and I wish I had the audio for this so I could play it for you, but I can't find it anywhere, where he said, "You may not know this, but back in 2008, the Home Office sent a circular to all police forces in the country saying, as far as these young girls who are being exploited in towns and cities, we believe they have made an informed choice about their sexual behaviour, and therefore it is not for you police officers to get involved in." Well, I'm going to couple that with something he actually said in an interview that I have a video of. Now, the clip I'm going to show you comes from the Manchester Evening News in relation to the fact that the CPS chief reversed a decision not to prosecute the Rochdale grooming gang, where the argument was that the main victim had made a choice to work as a prostitute. Some of the comments you're going to hear sound very familiar to those that would make the arguments against child pedophilia, the kind of arguments that would trigger little nimrods like Amos Yee to no end.
The thing that struck me most, these are still children. You know, I have children of my own, and just because you're 14 or 15, you can't make informed choices. And the perpetrators were in their 40s, 50s, you know, my age, who clearly knew better. When I read the prosecutor's advice to the officers in the earlier investigation, things like she has made a choice about her life. You know, she has agreed to be, in effect, a prostitute for these men. Everything about it shocked me, to be blunt, because what groomers do, what perpetrators do, is manipulate. And the fact that she was chaotic and troubled was actually the reason why she was targeted, because the perpetrator knew that nobody would believe her. I was absolutely certain in my mind that the decision taken in this case was wrong, It wasn't just unreasonable, which is the test, the legal test. It was wrong. And if it was wrong, to maintain public confidence, I had to reverse that decision, and so I did.
And just to continue with this article a little longer, although we do not have the full text of the circular, this description seems to strongly suggest that it was a blanket instruction which did not contain any reference to the girls' ages. If so, this is direct evidence of the UK government of that time at the very least condoning statutory rape of children and really giving the green light to the police to ignore far worse crimes. In other words, police inaction in these cases was deliberate policy, and the instruction came from the then Labour government. And there is a further quote from the article he wrote, which covers this in more detail. The term child prostitute was used extensively to describe them. It should be noted both that the Home Office in a circular to police in 2008 used that term and spoke of girls making an informed choice to engage in this behaviour. If any of this is proven to be true, this shines a truly terrible light on the then Home Secretary Jackie Smith. Not that the Labour government when they left office were in any way remotely popular to begin with. This would certainly cement a legacy of absolute ignorance. Now, because of how good this person is and what he has been fighting against, I want to highlight other things he's been involved in and quotes he has said. For example, grooming rings are the biggest recruiter for the far right. Senior lawyer Nazir Afzal warns the government and communities implicated in street grooming to do more or the situation will get worse. Now, I think we all know he's not talking about the whole of the far right as it is. He is talking about a very specific area of the far right. So before anyone who is a white nationalist or other gets too up in their own knickers, don't. You know what he means. Now, the article is written by Anush Chakalian. Pronunciation. And she goes to talk about how widespread they are. As we all know, though, this goes back to Rochdale, Rotherham, Telford, Oxford, Sheffield, Peterborough, Newcastle. There are many areas, I think it's 16 towns and many cities where there have been prosecutions that have taken place that are known of. And as we all know, with what these cases have in common, from what we have now known, it involves a nighttime economy, taxi services are quite common or takeaways, and while they're not organised, they are loose networks. They prey on very much vulnerable children, because it is very easy to take the vulnerable away from the family by promising them good things, and then once you've plied them with just enough, you then abuse them and misplace their trust in you. The article itself also makes suggestions for how to help victims, a number of whom have criminal records because of what they were made to do, suggesting that erasing their criminal record is a good start. That's not something relevant to this video, but I certainly consider it to be quite an interesting and thought-provoking discussion to have on that subject. Now back to Nazir Afzal, because while he has taken a very keen interest in women's rights, he comes from a conservative tribal area in northwestern Pakistan, which to many would make him what many would consider to be, because of that background, an unlikely feminist. But he is in fact one, and he considers his gender because of that to be an asset. Because where he comes from, there are many issues women face. Men too, of course, I am not denigrating that. But I think understanding the cultural impact is quite important. I'm going to get flayed for that. Because of his beliefs, and because of the way he has tackled crime, certainly grooming gangs, he is quite the expert when it comes to dealing with things like sexual abuse. He did once work for the CPS, that is known. He also worked for the police force for a while as well, although if I remember correctly he stood down so he could go on question time. He has a very Brummy accent. He now works for the Welsh Government as an advisor for violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence, something which, let's face it, with his involvement in grooming gangs, he is a bit of an expert. Granted, it'd be great if he could tackle men being victims of all three, of course, but you have to understand with what he has achieved, it makes sense that he's involved in this. Now, something he has been more vocal on recently is the austerity and how it has harmed the hunt for sexual abuse gangs. We all know police cuts have absolutely harmed the police's ability to perform its job. Granted, also not helped by the additional workload brought on by having to police tweets, because that's important, and with the amount of money being spent on that, and on other things where the money should really go for looking for more recent missing children, perhaps. Granted, the Madeleine McCann one is quite tricky, but £12 million has been spent on it. spent trying to locate a child that went missing years ago. I'm not saying give up, but £12 million is a lot of money to spend on parental negligence. Nazir Afzal has done a fantastic job highlighting some of the genuine problems and concerns when it comes to tackling these crimes. Police funding is key to this. We are, of course, making progress, but think of all the progress we would have made had we actually invested the money properly sooner, and at the same time been able to deal with the crimes when they actually happen, as opposed to sweeping them under the rugs.
I had hoped that I would get on board comrades in the Labour Party, and many were. Many were genuinely sympathetic to what I was talking about and supported me in every way. But there was a small number who either very openly or perhaps whisper, sort of were saying things that perhaps I was something of a racist. And that was very upsetting. I'm absolutely convinced it was a political correctitude gone mad. There was absolutely no reason for it. I was rocking the multicultural boat, but how do you get changes without talking about it?
And putting out a statement where you victim blamed and scapegoated. Oh dear. If that ever came to light, by the way, oh dear God, Jackie Smith flayed in a courtroom. And she should be publicly shamed if true, the earlier statement about saying the young girls were prostitutes. As if children can in any way make an informed decision. It's one of the reasons I like this man. I don't care what he believes in. I don't care he's a feminist. I don't care that he now works for a department focusing on women. I don't. I care that he's tackling injustice. Of course, it would be lovely if everyone tackled injustice equally. Of course. And I agree with those that are undoubtedly going to tell me that in the comments. But as far as I'm concerned, men like this...
The reality is that where you have street grooming of the type that we're talking about in Rotherham, as we did in Rochdale and Oxford and other parts of the country, Asians and Pakistanis are disproportionately involved in this.
So please let me know what you think in the comments below about this man. I'm going to link a number of articles related to him, along with his Twitter, which is quite an interesting read. Recent events? Interesting. So I hope everyone has a lovely Wednesday, and thank you all for listening.